Thank you very much for attending my session today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ismail Mayat and I'm a senior developer here at the Cogworks. And the session topic today is examineness, hints and tips from the trenches. I first heard the word examineness actually from Shannon over 2 years ago when he first presented Examine at Code Garden. And it's sort of his word for some of the nuances and sort of the science of working with Examine. Now I've been using it actually since it first came out, and I absolutely love it. And any Umbraco implementations that I do, I always try and use it as much as possible, not just actually searching for stuff, but also sometimes with packages, and not just like a front-end search. So I try and use it wherever I can because I really do like it. And Shannon and Slace over the years have done a fantastic job with it. I don't know if any of you have ever had to look at the code base. It's, I can only describe it as a work of art. Some of it's, really, really well written. Just a bit of a sort of background to the actual idea for the talk. Over the 2 years while I've been working with it, I've been helping people out on the forums. And sort of the kind of questions people have been asking, I've been giving a similar answer, or more often than not, it was just pointing to a link to a previous answer that I'd already given. So it kind of gave me the idea, maybe try and put a session together and sort of basically come up with sort of hints and tips that people could use and take away, and hopefully sort of make their life a bit easier when actually working with Examine. The first thing is what this talk is not, and I think Doug's going to be a bit upset. I'm not going to cover how to install Examine, and I'm not going to cover how to configure it. There's plenty of stuff out there already on the forums, on the wiki. There's a couple of Code Garden videos, and also if you attend the level 2 talk, Darren covers sort of like a module thing on implementing Examine. And also on the Umbraco TV, there's I think there's 2 videos by Tim Geissens. So that sort of will cover all the sort of installation and setup and that kind of thing. However, what I am going to cover is tools to help you, some hints and tips regarding indexing, and I will be talking quite a bit about the gathering node data event. And it's a bit of an understatement when I say it's your friend. You will end up using it quite a lot. I find that every implementation that I do, it is something that I use quite a bit, just to massage the data into the correct format so that I can get my end result. I'll touch upon indexing media. Out of the box with Examine, you do get the PDF indexer, but I'm going to touch upon a project that I put together, and it's on our.umbraco, which does a bit more than just PDF documents. And I'll get a little bit deeper with the document writing event. This one's not as common as the gathering node data, but it does have its usages. And then I'll touch upon a bit with the search highlighting, a little bit about deployment to staging and production environments. A bit about faceting. It's not exactly Examine, more Lucene, but I thought it sort of tied in quite nicely. And a little section called Food for Thought. And this, on that particular bit, what I will do is just talk a bit about some of the things that I've already implemented, and other things that are more sort of ideas in my head, but I'm hoping they may sort of fire your imagination a bit and maybe give you some novel ideas on how you could use Examine more than just using it as a straightforward search. And then just at the end, your traditional Q&A. So moving on to tools to help you. First and foremost, Lucene in Action. How many of you have got this book? Okay, there's 1 or 2 hands coming up. I cannot recommend this book highly enough. I've had it since the first edition, and it's now gone into the 2nd edition. And as you may or may not be aware, Examine is just a nice wrapper around Lucene, and just makes using Lucene a lot easier. But some of the sort of core fundamentals regarding Lucene to do with indexes, analyzers, a document, what a Lucene document is, the fields, the different kind of fields that you can have. You know, what a term is, what a vector is, what a stored term is, that kind of thing. It's one of these books, you know, you're going to find that you can, you know, dip into every now and then, not like a cover-to-cover read, but it's one of my favourite all-time IT books. And the other really cool thing about it is towards the end there's loads of amazing case studies about some of the really powerful things that have been done using Lucene. So moving on, the other tool which you cannot do without is Luke. Luke effectively is Lucene's equivalent of SQL Server's Enterprise Manager. So when you have got your index and you just want to know what's in there, whether also to be able to test queries as you're building your search. And this is the Java version. But if you're not too keen on installing Java on your system or on your server, there is a .NET port which has got most of the functionality, bar Rhino scripting, which to this day I'm not exactly sure what it does, but I've never had to use it. But it's great just to sort of test your queries and that kind of thing, and I'll cover that on the next slide. So a typical scenario of using Luke is, you know, you're going to have a bit of code like this where you're, you know, getting your search object, starting to put together a query, putting your filters in, and then you actually do your search. Now, after you've actually done your search, if you do a criteria.toString and write that out to your trace or write it out to a hidden field, you're going to end up with an actual Lucene query. And you can then start running that actually inside Luke just to see what your query is or is not doing. And so many times it's got me out of trouble where I've put together a query and thinking, yeah, this should work, and nothing's coming back. And you know, just write it out, and you can do a cut and paste into Luke and start experimenting basically. The other tool, which is one of Darren's, is the Examine dashboard. Sorry? At all. Right, okay. If you do install it, I think where it does break is some of the functionality that was there previously when Darren put it together has now gone. But if you just follow the stack trace and comment out all the yellow screen of death lines, you'll find that it will work, and you will get to the point where you can actually rebuild your indexes, which is principally what I use it for. But the other cool thing that it has got is on the dashboard itself, it gives you the latest log entries. So as you're rebuilding your index, anything that's, you know, gone a bit pear-shaped, you'll be able to quickly see in the log, and then you can actually sort of diagnose. I still use it, and I've got a sort of a hacked version, which is just a user control which has had the offending lines commented out, but it works for me. So okay, cool. All right, will do. So moving on. Okay, the gathering node data event. Examine has a very rich event system, and in all my implementations I've used gathering node. And typically some of the scenarios where I use it is, the first one is merging everything into one contents field, and I'll talk about that a bit further on. Another usage is when I want to be able to do searching on path. So where I've had large websites, you know, a good few thousand nodes, for example, a press releases section and a news section, and I need to be able to list all of those items on one page as a paginated list, rather than using the node factory, I'll use Examine. But what I want to do is, rather than just pulling back everything based on a node type, which in this case would be a news item, what I want to do is get me everything below press releases or everything below the news section, which has a particular parent ID, and that's what I want to search by. So what I can do is, using the gathering node data event, get the path into the particular format I want, and I can actually do that, and I'll cover that further on. The other thing you can use it for is sticking data fields into the index which are not typically there. So if any of you have used the PDF Examine the one that you get out of the box. All you end up with is the actual file contents of the PDF, but it may be you need some other additional fields in there. You can use gathering node data to sort of get some of that data in there. Okay, so the first usage with gathering node data, this merging into a contents field. So a typical query where you've got maybe 8-9 different fields that you want to search upon, you're going to end up doing something like this, where, you know, criteria field, or field, and blah, blah, blah. But what you can do is, if you implement a class, inherit from application base, so it's wired up at start time, get an instance of your index that you're interested in, wire up the event, and you can do something like this, where just get a string builder, loop through all your fields, and then shove all that data into the one contents field. So then your query becomes something like this. Now, I have seen some instances where I've worked on other clients' websites where they've done the search in the typical way of just searching upon every field, and it's 8-9 lines long, whereas with this it's just all on one line. The other advantage to this is when you add any new fields that also need to be searchable, you don't have to come back to the query and add those fields as well. The query as it stands there will actually work. So moving on to the searchable path, gathering node data to be able to create a searchable path. The path field which comes from the node is there in the index as one of the sort of core properties, but it's stuck in there as a comma separated list, so it's not searchable as such. So if you want to do a search where all your nodes contain 1056, which is the parent, for example, for a particular section, it's not going to work. But what you can do is, again, using the gathering node data event, get that path, strip out the comma, replace it with a space, and shove it maybe into a new field, and then you've got that searchable path field, and you can start doing queries on that. The other thing you can do, where you would want to inject data in, is out of the box with Lucene. You can't do a search where the value of a field equals nothing. So another example is doing a select all with examine, you know, just like a select star from whatever table, or in this case from your actual index. But what you can do is use the gathering node data event and inject in some arbitrary data and then actually query on that. So an example would be, let's say you've got a title and you want to pull back all content which doesn't actually have a title. You could just inject in an arbitrary data field, call it node data underscore title, and do a test. Is it blank? It is. Stick a 1 in, and then you can actually come back and do a query on it. And it would be a similar thing if you wanted to do a select all records from your index. Inject in a field which, for all intents and purposes, just call it all records, give it a value of 1, and you can actually then do a query on it and pull back all your data. Just a few points with regards to gathering node data is, and I've been caught a few times with this, is particularly when you're using multi-tree node picker and you're doing anything with that in your index. If your content that you're currently indexing is referencing via multi-tree node picker another node which happens to have been deleted, then it will find that ID and actually try and get the node, and you're going to try and do something with it. It will error, and a good thing to do is just make sure you've got plenty of try catch, and stick some logging in, so then you happen to know which actual node has errored, and you can go and fix that. But it's a similar thing if you're doing anything else within gathering node data which potentially could throw an error. Just make sure you've got plenty of try catches in there, or else it'll stop the whole thing from indexing. But I've been caught out a few times, and I've seen a few other people actually get caught out with that one as well. Okay, so moving on to the next event, and this one is a bit more an obscure one, and it's not as commonly used, is the document writing event. Because examine is a wrapper around Lucene, it is an abstraction, but you can actually get lower level Lucene access. And typically you would want that if you want to boost the field. So what is boosting? Well, not all your documents are equal, and sometimes you may want to artificially rank certain documents higher in a search results set, and it's when sorting is just not enough. So a good example of this is, let's say you've got person doc type, and each of those persons has a job title, but depending on the seniority of their role, you're going to want them to appear higher up in a search list. And we actually had a client who wanted this. It was a law firm, and the senior practice owner, senior practice guys wanted to be at the top of the list. So the other thing you could do is also boosting documents by age, where you want to penalize older documents, which is going to be useful for news and business documents. But another way you could boost is on unique views, although you'd have to have that information up front. And also, if you had some kind of like functionality that you've implemented on your website, so the more likes a document has, you want that to appear further up in your result set. Or you could be actually tagging documents with weightings, and just pull that up. I don't know if any of you have seen this package. It just came out, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, the XMFS term selector, and it's a great way of tagging your documents. But the really cool thing is that I've seen on this is it's got this plus and minus thing where you can actually increase the size of the text of the actual tag, but what it's also actually doing is giving that tag a weighting, and you can store that. It's actually stored, but then what you can do is at indexing time get that weight and use that weight in your own sort of algorithm to actually boost the document, and that will change the order in your search results. Just so the way to get that low-level access so you can actually do your boosting is, again, you'd have a class which inherits from application base. Get the indexer again. The only real difference this time is that when you've got your index, you cast it to an Umbraco content indexer, and then at that point it's actually giving you access to some additional events, and one of those is the document writing event. And the arguments that are being passed in there, one of them exposes the actual Lucene document, and from there you can get the field. And in this instance what we did was, if the title was partner, we just set a boost on it. But obviously you can have your own algorithms to determine the actual boost. So that's sort of one of the usages for the document writing event. Okay, moving on. Indexing media. So out of the box with Examine, you get the PDF indexer, but that only indexes PDF content. So I put together a package, and it's the COG Umbraco Examine Media Indexer, which is one of the worst names I could probably think of. Could have named it something much better, but it's been around for a while now, and it's available on our, and I know a few people in the room who are actually using it. I know Hendy was probably one of the first to actually use it. And under the hood it uses Apache Ticker, and it will index the content in most cases, and it will also stick in there any associated metadata. So for example, with regards to Microsoft Word documents or PDF documents, any other additional attributes or metadata that you've got in that document, like the author, date it was created, any keywords, that kind of thing, it will rip all those out and actually shove them into your index as well. Now, with regards to audio and image and video formats, it's not the actual content of the video or the audio file, but it's actually the metadata. So one of the really cool things is that if it's images that you're indexing, it will rip out any EXIF metadata, so any keywords, and also if there's any associated GPS data, like geocode data, it will shove that into your index as well. And you could do cool things like if you've got like an image library and you want to show where it was the actual picture was taken, you could plot that onto a map. So yeah, that was one of the things with the with that particular package. So very quickly, search highlighting. So this is more like the Google type thing where you do a search and you come back with a set of results, and your actual keyword that you've typed in has been highlighted within the actual content. So there is a Lucene contribution package called highlighter.net which does exactly this, and that highlights any occurrence of your search term, but it will also pull back a result summary fragment in and around that keyword that it's found. So there's a wiki entry. But one thing, at some point I will be releasing all these slides, so all the links and things, you'll have access to those. So I think it was Darren who actually put this wiki entry together, and I sent him a bit of code and he sort of improved on it, and he's got something working which does the highlight stuff. Now one thing with the highlight, which ties in with the gathering node data event and the munging everything into the contents field, this is another advantage of doing that, is that the highlight code, it actually takes the field that you want to do the highlight on, and if you're searching over more than one field, you can't pass in more than one field. But if you've munged everything into the one contents field, you can pass that in, and then you can get the fragment wherever it happens to be within your actual content. So with regards to deployment to staging and production environments, it's a bit of a misleading thing that I put there. Actually, cannot copy an index. You can, but more often than not, you're probably going to end up with it being corrupted. And there's been instances where we've been checking indexes in, and they've become corrupt. So one of the things we do at the Cogworks is we never check our indexes in. But what we do have is a Selenium task, and with a HTTP handler, and we use that as part of our build process. So after the actual, we use Team City, but after the build's actually done and it's successful, it makes this, it runs the Selenium test and calls the HTTP handler, which then rebuilds the index after the build. So just a bit of code on there. It's just a HTTP handler, and from the query string, it just takes the index that you want to actually rebuild, and that's all it does. But then the actual Selenium test, which happens after the build within Team City, just calls the URL to the HTTP handler and actually rebuilds the index. So this way we've got around index corruption, which we used to get quite a lot when we were actually checking indexes into source code. The other thing I wanted to touch upon briefly was faceting. So we've probably all used faceting at some point or other. When you've ever been onto Amazon or LinkedIn and done a search, for example, if you go onto Amazon, just do a search for Lord of the Rings, let's say, you get back a whole load of result sets, but on the left-hand menu, you get a series of tags, which are effectively the facets. So is it a movie, CD, DVD, music that you're interested in, and you can sort of just click through and then drill down to the and refine your search results, basically. So LinkedIn uses one called Bobo Browser, which is written in Java, but it's been ported to .NET, and you can get it on Codeplex. And I'm going to show you a quick demo of using it through a unit test. And it's got a simple facet handler, which is just on a keyword, but there's also things like range, handler, path. There's also a geocode one as well. But let me just bring that up. Where are we? So the code for this in the unit test, what you do is you first of all set up some fields within your code, and these are the actual fields that are existing within your Lucene index, and these are the fields that you want to facet on. So in this particular index, I've got directory type, country ID, and a region, which is just the first two letters of a postcode. And it's just a matter of firing up a couple of facet handlers, and you pass in the actual Lucene field that you want to facet on. And then you get your index, open it up, and then there's a couple of just sort of default parameters that you pass in, and then you actually do your search query. So in this case, I'm actually searching on the node name, and I'm searching for all node name that contains the text gallery. So you run that query, and then at the same time, what it will do is actually pull back for you all the facets that you've passed in. And what that actually looks like is show you a quick one. So on that particular query, it's come back with 204 documents, and these are some of the facets. So on the directory type, it's found that there are 117 that are other, and these are the other facets within directory type. These are the actual country facets, and here's the region facets, which is the 2-letter postcode. So please remember that. Did somebody read that? So that was the facet handler. So moving on, the food for thought. So one of the ideas was trying to use the index as an object database, a bit like RavenDB. Obviously nothing as powerful as that, but the scenario, you have nodes with quite a few numbers of multi-tree node pickers, which are effectively lookups. So an example of this is we've got products, and they have permitted locations and permitted stipulations. This was actually for a charity, and I'll show you the front end, which will make a bit more sense. But each one of these effectively products or donation items can be belong to a particular any number of locations, and also a particular stipulation. So on the front end, everything is loaded everything is loaded up front, and we use jQuery. And what we have is that depending on the actual donation item that you're selecting, it will change the actual donation type and also the location. So, for example, it could be the Children's Fund, which is only applicable to certain countries. So it's all done up front using jQuery, but the actual data for it, we need to pull that back up front and display it. So all the products, all the related countries and their country codes, which are sort of hidden away, but then as the donation item's selected, and then the items actually being checked out, it's actually codes that are being passed through. So that's just showing you some of the sort of different locations and things. So the actual node IDs are stored in the index as CSV through the multi-tree node picker. But what we were doing was that using the gathering node data, as the item's being indexed, for the particular product, we get the locations, get their country name, get the code, get the stipulation, and then create that as a class, as a POCO, and serialize it to JSON, and actually store it in the index with the actual product. So the advantage is that the lookup is instant. So as soon as I've got the actual product, I can just look in the index and just pull back all the related data and load that up. The only disadvantage with it is that if the actual lookup data is changing quite often, so one of the country code changes, then you're going to have to do a lookup for that country code on all the products that it's used on and update those as well. But thankfully on this particular project, it was data that was fairly static, so it wasn't really an issue. So it's a nice approach if the data is static. So another idea, although this is something we haven't done yet, but it was something sort of I wouldn't mind having a look at, was within USite Builder actually hydrating your POCOs using the index. I'm not sure, how many of you actually using USite Builder? Yeah, there's a couple of you. I think Pete's doing his session at the moment. But the actual POCOs currently are hydrated using Node Factory. So it'd be nice to be able to actually pull it all from the index, which is going to be a lot quicker. And there is a nice open source project called activeleucine.net. And all you do is your POCO, which is being used for Site Builder, you just add a couple of extra attributes where you map the actual field in your index to one of your POCO products. And then all you do is get your document from Lucene, and then it's just a simple mapping using the Lucene mediator class, so you can map the actual Lucene document directly onto your product. The only thing is that you'd have to use Lucene directly, as there's no way of getting the actual Lucene document from Examine, as far as I'm aware. But if anybody knows how to do that, I'll be very happy to know how to do that. So the main take-home point today is use the index. It's not just all about sort of front-end search, but there's quite a lot of really cool stuff that you can do with it, and which is what we try and tend to do when we're working with Examine. And that's me more or less done. So if there's any questions anyone has? Yeah?
How often you rebuild the indexes while it's in production?
On production itself, we just leave it. It's very rare that we're having to rebuild the indexes. In the earlier versions of Examine, we were finding that the index would, for some bizarre reason, corrupt, and we found that we would have to rebuild. But with later releases, it's been very rare that we've had to rebuild. The only other time you're going to really end up rebuilding is if you're adding or removing fields from a document type. So obviously you don't want it still to be living there in the index unless you're going to republish all your content, and that would effectively update the index as well. But with regards to production, it's been very rare that I've had to rebuild since sort of later releases of Examine. Yes?
I presume that your media indexer is still using the job.
It is, yeah. It is.
Much of the kind of the weight and
There is it? I think it was somebody called Chris who, it was a couple of weeks ago, he'd done something with something like 13,000 media items, and he didn't say anything if he was having any performance issues. But have you done it with something more?
No. To be honest, as far as I'm aware, there's nothing tinkering.
Yeah, that's the thing. I haven't come across anything, which is.
We've basically actually just had solid sitting.
Yeah.
Obviously adjacent it's been on a list
Yeah. So not that I'm aware of, but I do know somebody. It was somebody called Chris, but I'm not sure. He said he was coming today, but I know he's done something like 13,000 media nodes, and that was with PDF and Word, and he's not come across any issues. So. Yeah.
Is it reasonably durable? Something down in certain types of PDF,
Yeah, I think if the PDF's secured, then that's not going to probably work. Not that I've tried it with that, but I have in the past when I've used PDF Box. If the PDF is protected, it's not going to pull the content out. So yeah. Anything else? No? Okay. But so that's my Twitter, and if anyone's got any questions related to this, feel free to contact me. And I'm always on the forums as well, answering Examine questions amongst other things. And I'll try and get the slides up as soon as possible, possibly on Dropbox or through the Cogworks website blog. So all the links and things that I've got in there, you can follow those up and download whatever. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.